was a great gun, handler of guns, a yachtsman, basically car driver. Everything that they'd want to see Elizabeth Taylor out with Bob Stack. So, but she had nothing to do with the stuff. I mean, I do know what was his name, Don Taylor, who my father knew Don Taylor from World War II. Don Taylor was the gentleman that married Elizabeth Taylor, and in the movie that made her star, Fathers, where basically you have Adventure Tracy Fang, her Father the Bride it was, and then Father's Little Dividend was those two movies. And Bob Taylor, said basically, gosh, she's a stuck-up bitch. Yeah. I heard it, my father said he told that to him. He said, she's pleasant to work with, but she really loves herself.
Well.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, I guess because after everybody was fawning over her.
Well, she was fawning. Basically, she was the queen of the lot. I mean, totally the queen. I mean, this was a woman, Elizabeth Taylor, who was the queen of everything she went to her entire life.
But see, part of it, she's a queen of everything. It's like, okay, so that's what happens.
That's what happened. But, I mean, like I said, I knew her when she was the young, like the young girl, the young teenager that was just the most friendly person on earth. But I never saw her again. When she had 18, she had nothing to do with anybody, any teenage boy. That was just a lot.
Well, although she met Robert Wagner when she was young.
Well, yeah, but Robert Wagner
was her age.
Robert Wagner was her age.
Oh, so they turned 18 together.
So they just had a lot of, actually he was, he's 2 years older than she was. But she, remember, Robert Wagner belonged too, because Robert Wagner was, he was a caddy on the golf course, and basically all of the stars knew Robert Wagner. This is Robert. I understand that the story goes is that they used to deliberately hit balls over onto the studio lot, and have RJ go over to get the balls for him so that the people over there could see him. It was their way, because they knew that the kid had a lot of talent. And what happened was, back in the 40s, in the 40 period, Robert Wagner, they needed old, because a lot of the people that went off to war came back old. And because they came back old, they couldn't play the young parts anymore. But Robert Wagner, we're talking until the 1960s, was playing that young, effervescent type that just barely out of the teenage area, even though he wasn't. I mean, I think R.J. Wagner's 81 now.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so we're talking 60 years ago, he was not a teenager, but he was still playing those young parts well until the end of the 60s. So, but the people that really knew Elizabeth Taylor closest were, like I said, I think, Roddy McDowell, Montgomery Clift, Robert Wagner, and they all totally loved the woman. I mean, because she had to have friends that she knew.
She'd known them for years since she was a kid, so those are the friends she trusted.
And she totally trusted. I mean, she knew, she thought that Montgomery Clift was the most handsome man in the world, and just longed to work with Montgomery Clift, and she got to work with him in a couple of movies.
So, one of the things you always talk about Elizabeth Taylor is, first of all, besides the number of husbands, she loves, what, men and animals?
Yeah, because she never got over, she always wanted, because, like I said, she basically was a refugee from England. I figure she always wanted to be held by somebody. And she had a horrible choice in men, though. Terrible choice. The one man I think she really truly loved the most was Michael Todd.
Yeah. And
Michael Todd was the producer of Around the World in 80 Days. He died on, I think he died on the way to the Academy Awards. Oh. And she went up on the stage and accepted the award for Michael Todd for Best Picture. Oh. That was, I think she loved maybe Michael Wilding she loved a lot. And she basically battled with Richard Burton. Eddie Fisher was just somewhat in between her, so I think it was because she didn't get along well with she did get along well with
Carrie Fisher?
I can't remember her name. Carrie Fisher's mother.
Debbie Reynolds.
Debbie Reynolds, yeah. And she got along well with her, but she basically had this thing about it wasn't as long as somebody else she wanted it.
Oh, Elizabeth did?
Yeah, so she married Fisher, then dumped Fisher for Burton. But she
was a naughty girl then.
Yeah, she's naughty. She liked to do lots of things. She loved children. She had lots of children. But you know,
you don't really hear about her children though.
No, but she did, and she was a good mother, I think, to Richard Burton's children. But she was, and I understand. You know, I've never heard anybody say anything bad about her as a mother, which is a sort of a thing, because I think what it was is that she didn't want her children to grow up like her, because she was never really happy as an actress.
Really?
No.
What happened to her parents when she was younger? Because you said she came over younger when she was a refugee.
I never knew. All I knew is that the only time I ever saw her was when she was on a lot. But she didn't socialize anywhere. My grandmother never had, my grandmother never talked about her father. So that's my knowledge of it. The problem comes is that I'm old. I've been around for, actually and truly, I'm in my 8th decade, because that's the way it works. I've been around, I've been acting since the 1940s. And I got to meet a lot of people, a lot of the older people. But the older people were only in their 30s then. I mean, I knew Errol Flynn when Errol Flynn was in his 30s. I knew John Wayne when John Wayne was a young man. I knew,
Which means he's been around the business for a long time.
That's what I mean. Is when I was growing up, I had no comprehension of what this age was, because all the people I never knew anybody in the industry that wasn't too far into his 40s. I never knew any of them. So my recollection of most of the people that I knew in the 1940s and 50s they were all young people. And then, I knew I met Vincent Price when Vincent Price was very young. And Boris Karloff was actually very young when I met the gentleman. He was in his 40s. And my grandmother liked to scare kids with them on Halloween. And guess who's coming by this evening, children? And then there'd be a good evening.
Oh, this great voice.
Yeah, good evening. Yeah. I even met Bela Lugosi. He came by. I would like to bite your neck. No, it's the regulations of a Hollywood kid. Because I grew up in the business. My father grew up in the business. My grandmother came east from the Edison Studios to California. She worked for Thomas Edison and D.W. Griffin.
Oh, she did know Thomas Edison.
She came east with Edison. She came from east to the west with Edison.
Wow.
So because my grandmother could actually use a typewriter. Yeah.
Actually, that was a big deal.
Yep. My grandmother could type, and my grandmother could take notes on the sets. So my grandmother was not a stenographer. She was not a professional typist, but my grandfather. Her husband basically ran a construction business, and she basically did the books and all of this stuff for him. So when she came west, they came west with Edison, not because Edison brought them west, was because my grandfather realized, he said, there's a lot of potential for building out there. So it's how that happened. Not because of the movie industry, they came west. It was just sort of serendipity that Edison was coming west at the same time to give him an excuse to pack up and leave from the leave there. But like I said, I know. Elizabeth Taylor. I thought she was a very nice little girl, and really nice. Like I said, she said I started out the first time I danced with her. I was like 9, and she was 14.
So she has this reputation of being absolutely gorgeous. I looked at the pictures, and
she always dressed.
Many of you have. Was she always gorgeous when she was young too?
Yeah, they said that. It is said that Elizabeth Taylor was born with the looks of an angel. She had, this gorgeous hair. She was born, that way. And it's just some people are. It's just that some people, like my youngest, was basically born with no hair, and we tell people we had to use retin-A, the stuff on her hair to get her hair to grow. She was bald for a long time. But Taylor was born. from the day from the baby pictures they took of her, she was gorgeous. So it's just like you must have been a beautiful baby because look at the way you are now. That was they said. That could have been written for Elizabeth Taylor. That's basically all I can do. I'm not being sued on that one, but I liked her. Most of the kids that I knew really liked her, and then she became 18, and not a lot of kids liked her anymore.
Because they didn't get to see her anymore.
They didn't get to see her anymore. I mean, she was friendly. She was, you know, she tried to overcompensate, I think, because she was over here, and she didn't really want to be here because everyone she knew was elsewhere. Mm. So, and they didn't know, and she really didn't go back for a long time. So, well, she was under contract to MGM for God knows how long. So she was a product of the studio system, and they nurtured her. A lot of what she became, you know, the Insecure, you know, all of this stuff was because of the studio system. You know, they let her go out with certain people. Like I said, they picked me because I was safe. You know, and how do you know he's safe? Well, because his grandmother is related to her father, so therefore makes him safe. Mm-hmm. And then the fact too that
could you imagine if anything ever happened, your grandmother would be so upset with you?
Oh yeah, I'm 9 years old. I didn't hit on girls.
You weren't even thinking about girls at 9.
No, I didn't think about girls. Okay, I'm gonna put it this way: we're talking. I danced in Little Abner like a decade later. And we're talking, these ladies are really put together. I'm not paying attention to little girls the ladies that are put together. I'm pushing 20 at that time. I'm concentrating on the dance moves, which I didn't know I was doing either.
Well, because you were just called in as a floater, and you're trying to, okay, what am I supposed to do?
I mean, I ride for Seven Brothers as one of the people.
Oh, you were?
Yeah, I'm one of those guys.
That's a classic.
I'm just one of the people. Michael Kidd hated me a lot, so. But, you know, because I couldn't dance. I could dance, but I didn't take lessons. And because I didn't take lessons, I was not a good dancer. No, if I saw what they did, I did it. I was just one of those townspeople at one of these things dancing. I'm one of the kids, you know, one of the young guys. And I didn't notice that Julie Newmar was really well put together. I didn't notice that Ruta Lee was rather well put together. I didn't know it. I did the surf and sand things in the 50s and early 60s. I never paid any attention to how well everyone looked. And then I sat there, and I remember I sat there with my Angelique watching movies one day, and she'd go, you know, you can't tell me you didn't look down those girls' tops. And then look, I gotta look, because I'm staring, you know, I'm watching like somebody over here's moves, because, I mean, she's done herself, when she's trying to watch herself dance, you're half beat behind. And you're not paying attention to
everything else that's going on, because you're trying to do the dance moves.
Yeah, I mean, again, when I was doing one of the things, I never lifted a girl in my life. Mm-hmm. And I did not know how it was supposed to be. Basically what it is, the girl jumps into your arms, and the momentum, you go like that.
Yeah, that's why they...
But all I did was, because I was a floater, I was called in, if somebody didn't show up, what happened, the girl jumped, I muscled her up and held her. Girl weighed about 150 pounds.
Wow.
I mean, they were not little girls, folks. These were really healthy young ladies. Same thing as, but like I said, we're doing, you know, that thing on Taylor. I mean, I liked her when I was a kid. And again, most teenage boys liked her when she was a teenager.
And they loved her later on as she grew up.
Yeah, because I look at Elizabeth Taylor in the 1940s and look at her as, say the Annette Funicello of the 1940s. Or by Funicello, they knew, the instant Walt Disney saw her, he knew that she was something special.
Do they have that screen presence?
Yeah.
You know, there's certain people, they walk into the room and all of a sudden all the eyes gravitate towards them.
Yeah, because, I mean, I did some of this stuff on Disney, and I mean, they said, well, a lot of the boys, because Annette Funicello was really like, no, she wasn't when she was a little girl, guys. I don't know where they get that idea that, you know...
Well, they don't remember from then.
They remember her from the Beach Party movies, but they should not. She was a little girl. You know, she might have had... Basically, there were other girls on the set that had a lot bigger figure than she did. But she had that presence about her, you know, that it's like once in a generation someone comes around that everybody goes gaga over. And in the 1940s, it was Taylor. Mm-hmm. You have to remember, too, that everybody from my era is dying. Mm-hmm. It's a bad part. I mean, soon there's not going to be anybody, you know, like I'm one of the younger ones still functioning, and I'm on camera considerably more than what they are. But I mean, you know, sometimes they come up to me and they talk to me and want to, you know, what are you doing? Well, you really look good for your age. I love that. You look good for your age.
Well, because they remember you from, you know, the days of old.
I didn't look good when I was young. You know, so, I mean, I tend to look a lot better than in some sense, I do look a bit, I really look different than what you're seeing me on camera. I'm much trimmer, and I tend to be a little bit taller, and I tend to look a little bit younger than what I am. I photograph old, which basically, as one gentleman the other night over at Mikey Kaufman's LA gallery event at the Sunset Gallery, he said, you know, and this is what he said, you know, he said, I've seen you everywhere since the Academy Awards. You must be hot again. No, I just decided to go back out. I mean, we'll try it this way. But actually, we're going to explain this, you know, before we end this. My